Chapter 8. Jexter. Talk now! I'm guessing the kid was getting tired of playing. He was so angry that his eyes were glowing red while I was freezing like an Eskimo. He stomped on my half-frozen back. We both heard more than just the ice cracking. What do you want? I asked, annoyed. He stood there expecting me to have the answer. Look, dummy, don't take till tomorrow. I gotta pee. Get up. He yanked me off the floor. Who do you work for? Jexter works for no one, I replied. Not even Tourniquet. I didn't care if he owned this stupid island. No one expects me to fight or do anything for that matter. I'm a big kid now, and surprisingly smart enough to pick my own battles. How do you know him? I raised an eyebrow. Tourniquet, he reminded, shaking me. Quit it! I pushed him away. You're going to make me puke! He slung me down, causing me to knock my noggin. You want to hear my story, do you? I just want answers. But do you truly know your question? Confused, he stood straight and glared down at me. I'll answer all your questions after you hear my story, K. Pumpkin. Fine, he replied with a stern look on his face. I smiled back, not that he could tell, for I was putting on my brilliant mask. It all started like this in the kingdom of Reyes. This place, this castle, Reyes was ruled by King, whatever. He was a very nice dude. Anywho, I met this lovely lady. I was walking about the market street, looking for someone to spook. The night was calm, and the moon was a sweet, beautiful blue. But I hated quiet moments. And for me, scaring people was an addiction. Fear was my drug and a pure sickness to others. I was always told that scaring people would make their skin crawl. And I intended to watch that happen. So, I was creeping about, minding my own business, when my eyes had finally locked onto my next victim. She donned a fancy white gown and was sniffing a glowing bushel of forget-me-somethings. I can never seem to remember their names. Then I realized she was picking the perfectly pretty flowers and putting them in the bun of her hair. Sneakily, I tiptoed toward her and only looked down when a twig snapped under my step. Wide-eyed, I peered back up at her. She was still picking those dang flowers. She didn't even bother turning around. To make sure I didn't make another mistake, I made one huge step and planted myself next to her. Perhaps I would die from her beauty. I tapped her shoulder and she jumped slightly at the sight of me. Oh, you scared me. Clearly, I did not. I expected a much better reaction. If only it weren't for that stupid stick. You don't need flowers to make you beautiful, I said, politely smacking one of the flowers out of her smooth hand. She smiled. That's not what my husband thinks. My heart sunk. Your husband? I asked nervously, running a hand through my thick brown hair before resting it on my neck. How could a lucky man such as he say something like that? Oh, I don't know, she replied. I wish I had the chance to take it back. Then I had a lovely idea. Anytime you want a do-over... Isabel! A distant roar interrupted me. I glanced back and forth before leaping into a nearby bush. It was surprisingly uncomfortable. Please don't go, she called out as a large, bearded man in an aged leather apron appeared behind her. My heart pounded with excitement. Whatever was to become of her? His meaty hand snatched her forearm, and he leveled his face to hers. His breath must have smelled like cow dung based on her disgusted expression from the moment he opened his mouth. What in Ika's name are you doing out this late? He demanded, yanking the glowing forget-me-somethings out of her hair. She smacked him away. I do not need your protection or permission. I can and will venture out of my own volition. Ooh, cool, she rhymed. Suddenly I heard a loud smack and leaped out of the bush. Her face flustered a bright red, and the large man turned to me. Who is this? He bellowed as I waltzed to the couple. Her tears choked her voice as the man just raised his own. Huh? Once the moonlight illuminated his brute face, I recognized him. Malachus Aurelio, the blacksmith. For years we hated each other, and this scene wasn't really helping. I kneeled next to Isabel and put her arm over my shoulder. "Put my wife down," he demanded. "Your wife?" I carried her now and looked into her eyes. A pure, sweet, innocent gray peered back at me, though her right cheek was still red from her abuser. "Try, victim?" She motioned to me that I could put her down, and the moment I did, she vanished into the night. "You dare challenge me, you insolent swine?" "I happen to like bacon." He swung at me, but I moved fast enough to jump out of the way. Unbeknownst to us, the king and his men were exiting the castle. Using my deceitful talents, I quickly developed a plan and couldn't help smiling about it. I grabbed Aurelio's hands and clamped them round my own neck. Giggles. The knights readied their crossbows and sword as the king ordered my release. Thanks to my plan, Malachus Aurelio became furious, leading to his inevitable arrest and escort to the castle dungeon. "Thank you so much. That crazy dude wouldn't stop for anything," I informed the king. "You're welcome," he replied weakly with his old self. How can I repay this generosity? I hoped he'd ask me to become a knight. It was my dream to become a knight. That's all I care for, other than scaring the living Beelzebub out of people. The king scratched his gray beard. "How would you like to be my jester?" he offered. "I would be honored," I snapped back to reality. "Wait, what?" "I wish for you to be my new jester." I thought. "The last one was brutally mauled by a wolf. I can't wait. If you worked for me, you would never have to worry about this kind of situation again." I considered it for a bit. "Okay, I accept your offer," I said. "Now, how much we talking here?" asked the king. "Like bi-weekly part-time minimum wage volunteer?" I scoffed, rolling my eyes. "'Cause honestly, I hate both." "Both? No thanks," I continued. "We can talk more about pay later." "Now that you are part of the high society," the maid accompanying me up the stone staircase conversed, "you can have the last jester's old room." Torches were mounted on posts on either side of the stone hall. Fancy wooden doors were just yards apart from each other, each leading to separate rooms. "All right, so which is his room?" I asked curiously. Here, we came upon a door slightly different from the others. It was so disgusting it looked as if the entrance were made of cobwebs. Not to sound rude, but has this door ever been cleaned?" "It's the strangest thing," she answered. "But every time I used to clean the cobwebs, later on the same broom I used would be outside my door and broken in half. I don't understand how it happened or why." "Really? How peculiar." "Very. So now I just let it go." She opened the door, and inside of the room was completely empty except for a single sheetless bed and chamber pot. Let's not confuse those two. "You never added anything to this?" "We never thought we needed to," the maid answered. "Not every day does the king ask someone to be his jester." "Good point. Not every day do they become dog food either." "If you need me, just call." "So what's your number?" I asked. "You should definitely practice the jokes." She led with a rather confused expression. "Service sucks here anyways," I moaned, pulling out my cellular device to simply toss it aside. I spread my limbs and soared to the bed, and soon discovered the kingdom must have been too lazy to get a mattress as well. I laid flat on the thick wooden board. Ow! I'm in heaven. Upon the sheetless bed was my new red and black diamond-patterned attire, folded neatly along with a pair of belled shoes and matching hat. Well, until I landed on it. I picked up the suit, blew off the dust and spiders, and made a face. I removed my filthy garments and pulled the costume over me. It was slightly tight, but fit just right. Ooh, cool, another rhyme. Anyways, I pulled the pants on and fastened the belt before slipping on the shoes. Now, I liked scary things, and this room was a bit too boring for me to handle, so I decided to explore the castle. I slid the stone hallways and down the railing of the coiling stairway. To my surprise, an old maid was coming up the stairs with supplies. It was too late to move, and I slammed into her. "Gotta go!" I cackled. She glowered and helplessly got back to her feet. She was at least 80-something, so she had plenty of experience with standing back up on her own. I didn't need her attitude. I sprinted down the last hall when a torch caught my attention. The fire sizzled and poofed. I landed into the wall to shield myself as my pulse heightened excitedly. Then the fire took on the shape of a fine lady. Even her hair was made of towering flames. "Hey, hot stuff," I said, exiting my hiding spot. She turned to me. Her eyes were tiny white pupils, and she was impressively stunning. "How's a hug sound?" I asked her. "Dreadful," she responded. "Touch me and you will get burned." "Where did you come from? Are you a knight also?" "I've never seen you before." "I am not a knight, but a warrior all the same," she said. "You are not a knight either." "Well, of course I am," I said proudly. "Avoid the blacksmith," she warned. "Excuse me?" "Avoid the blacksmith at all costs. He seeks something more precious than your life." "That fat fool is deep in the dungeon." She evaporated moments later, and I continued my adventure. I found the king standing by a couple of knights. "Well, look at you," he said to me. "Now it's time to test your worth as my jester." "You mean jokes?" I replied. "That is what a jester does around here. They're harlequins, comedians," he said. "Yeah, I just don't know any." Let's just say I had a much better sense of humor than your average Joe. "Fine. Got it," I thought for a moment. "What is the name of the man who can catch the moon?" The king and the knights were puzzled. They looked at each other funnily. They were trapped right where I wanted them, confused. "What?" a knight asked. "A knight," I said, laughing. They joined in too. "Get it?" One of the knights laughed. "He catches the moon because—" "Oh, wait, I don't get it." "Shh, give us another," the king ordered. "Thousands of these tiny things work together to create the big picture," I said. Stunned again. They had no idea. "Could you give us a hint?" "The things are colorful and tiny that create a big picture." One knight whispered the riddle to himself. I was beginning to get annoyed. It was so easy. "Just so you know, you can't give up on this one." "Mosaic tiles!" the king cried. "Yes!" I replied, pointing. "All right. Here's the last for now. The man who makes it doesn't want it. The man who wants it doesn't use it. And the man using it doesn't know he has it." They were completely stumped on this one. Surprise, surprise. Then I heard a low, deep growl behind me, mumbling the correct answer. "A coffin." I turned to see Malleus Aurelio's brute face looking back at me. "Of a dead man," he finished. "Correct," I replied. "How did you escape the dungeon?" the king asked as the two knights unsheathed their sabers. "Because you forgot to shut the door," I cried out, causing the two knights to laugh hysterically. "Now that's funny," one cried as the king glared at him. "It wasn't too hard," Malleus Aurelio growled as the three started to back away cautiously. "Your so-called knights were easy to kill. By the way, their puny swords," he reached his huge fingers and bent one of their blades, "make wonderful toothpicks." "That's enough," I said, running up to him. The giant knocked me over, and my body went limp. The stench of fire lingered in the atmosphere. I was restrained by leather straps on the armrest of the seat when a sinister chortle arose. "You fly. For too long you've bothered me." I recognized it was the blacksmith. This must have been his workshop. The floor shook every time he took a step. "What do you want?" I asked. "Please, I'll give you anything." "Actually, I was planning on giving you a gift instead." He tore off my blindfold, and I suddenly saw a burning white item. "I forged this from an amber housing poisonous yarators, little demon scorpions capable of intoxicating beasts as tall as towers. They are known for exactly that reason." He He used a metal picker and brought the hot thing to my sight. The object was a highly heated, nicely constructed mask. Funny how the mask was the same exact proportions of my face, huh? He brought the white, hot metal toward me. Stop! Stop! You don't know what you were doing! But Malchus Aurelio didn't care. He advanced, slowly, ever so slowly, inching the thin mask on my now sizzling face. I howled in pain, my body twitching, legs jerking, body convulsing. It burned! Oh, how it burned! My flesh popped and seared as it melted, fusing with the hot mask. The pressure erased my breath. My hands and my fingers played invisible piano that only orchestrated despair. Even the mask indentions of eyelids stuck to my own. Suddenly the amber mask was now completely stuck on me and refused to budge until Malchus mercilessly yanked it off. The air singed my naked face as I looked closer at the mask. Hanging off the side was a floppy thing. It looked like skin. Malchus Aurelio tore it off and tossed it in my lap. To my fear, I discovered exactly what the slab of skin was. I stared back at me, screaming. It was my face. Now you suffer. Dead. Silence filled the area. The blacksmith was nowhere to be seen. The fire was out. My shackles were loosened. Only the stench of burning flesh remained. My face felt weird. Oh, well, not hurting anymore, just numb. A numbness I couldn't explain. I let out a scream that would curdle anybody's blood. I immediately hit the ground and forced myself to crawl over to the fleshy slab of skin that used to coat my face. My face. The orators that had been freed of the amber crawled between the strings of my facial muscles. In my attempt to rid them, they would only burrow deeper inside my tissue. My hand shook as I picked up the slab and attempted to put it back on. When I saw failure in my actions, I stuck my finger through the eye socket and held it. Then it hit me like something that hits. I frowned and threw the face away. I was free. I didn't need it. I was so enlightened. How did I not see it? This whole time my face was just weighing me down. I would be so much more powerfuler without my skin. I wanted it gone. All gone. I was so excited I could scare whoever I wanted now, and with more than enough disgusted feedback, at least more than just a miniature jump. I looked forward to smothering my face in everything. No rainfall, pillow, or bag of needles would ever feel the same against my skin. Everything was different now, and I loved it. And without eyelids, I wouldn't even have to worry about not scaring people. My eyes would always be open. I wouldn't miss anything. Jexter, said a voice that made me jump. Please, come forward, I retorted. Help me. A hand touched my shoulder. I turned around and laughed eerily, though the man was not fazed. Do you enjoy frightening people, or frightening people? Yes. We don't know each other. He paused. Not yet, anyways. I thought for a second, wondering what he could possibly want from me, and then he waved his arm around as a strange fog formed. A dream, perhaps? I couldn't put my finger on it, but I liked what I saw. A mist floated in front of us. Your talent for sneaking up on people is no ordinary gift, he said, gesturing to a figment of me in the smoke wearing the strange mask, tiptoeing behind Aurelio. Your enemy. I smiled as he died at my hands before the vision morphed to a new picture. And the girl of your dreams, he trailed off. I saw Isabel hugging my neck as I kissed her. The me, with my own face, that is. Her smile nearly brought gator-sized tears to my eyes. I can grant you your heart's desire. How do I get this strength? The poisonous Yarators, he explained, pacing. They keep you from dying and give you massive speed and strength, at least for now. Unfortunately, their poison will eventually kill you after altering your mind. Too late for that! I squealed. The man looked at me, annoyed, before speaking again. Luckily, I have a way to prevent that. I had so many mixed emotions, and my mind was filled to the brim with questions. How long would it have taken for the poison to kill me? And when? Is this what Hot Stuff had warned me about earlier? How do I live forever? I'll tell you once you finish Malachus, Aurelio. I left Malachus's workshop long enough to devise a scheme before heading back. Outside it I waited to finish him once and for all. I smelled the heat of the furnace as hammering noises filled my ears. I poked my head through the window with caution and gasped at the sight. Isabel was standing there, hammering a mallet against a thinning metal. The handle of her creation resembled a pair of intertwined snakes. I peered over to the corner. Strangely, Malachus Aurelio was bound in chains against a post. I believe that brute deserved so much more than that. I leaped into the window and tiptoed to Malachus Aurelio. His face was bruised as he pleaded for help through a muffled mouth. I smiled, showing my new fangs at him, shaking my head. You took my face. I'll take your life and live forever. As I raised my claw at him, I turned to Isabel, who stared back at me coldly. Who are you? She asked. Hello, darling, it's me. We met earlier, remember? I chirped as she made a disgusted face. I had a little work done. Hubby here gave me quite the facelift. State your reason for being here. A mysterious man came to me, showing me a vision, I explained. It showed that he was dead, I indicated to Malachus. And we were together. He also told me that once I killed him, he'd tell me how to live forever. The vision was only half true. She picked up the blade she'd forged and walked up to Malachus and I. He died. She stabbed the saber through the column in his spine. No! I screamed as Malachus choked out his last breath. But I shall never love you. I was so full of anger and frustration. She'd stolen my immortality. You vile woman! I jumped and tackled her. My hands finally managed to wrap around her throat, but soon lost their grip due to a hard kick. Then she jumped on top of my shoulders and wrapped her legs around my neck, causing us to topple to the floor. I flicked my tongue at her and wrapped it around her arm, which was going for another blow. Then I flipped backward and flung her into the column. What exciting powers came along with this new curse of mine. Her fragile back cracked against the pillar before she collapsed like a rag doll. She weakly stood upright as I leapt over to her. I grabbed her right shoulder and smiled at her evilly before flicking my wet tongue in her ear. She jerked away in disgust and kicked my chest. I landed into the main work table as several spherical devices fell, rolling along the ground. The impact shook the wall and made a bear's head land in front of me. Malachus Aurelio could use an extreme makeover workshop edition. Running up to me, her eyes red with anger and smoke billowing from her flaring nostrils, Isabel attempted another hit. I tossed the bear head at her while kicking the spheres. They exploded, making smoke rise. How fancy! Isabel coughed and I dropped from the ceiling and on top of her, obviously a blind spot. She struggled. I laughed, her back arched as she flung me off. I'm sick of playing games, she cried out. I'm not, I retorted, leaping and kicking her with both feet and perfect hang time. Isabel flew backward into the wall as it collapsed on impact, the dust covering her mixed in with the foggy night air. Her eyes widened in terror as my fist planted on top of her skull. She fell onto her back. "Now, time to finish you off!" I screamed in her ear. I snatched her limp ankles and dragged her over to the edge of the cliffside across from the workshop. I flipped the woman over and looked her dead in the eyes. "This was for tricking me!" I stomped on her shins and flung my tongue around her neck and held her over the cliffside as she cried relentless pleas and reasons why I shouldn't commit a crime like that. "You're not a killer." "I'm not. You are. You took my chance for immortality. You killed me," I yelled, slipping my grip. She squealed in fear as my tongue caught her small but able wrist again. Waves crashed at the island side below. "What do you mean? How was I supposed to know?" I released my grasp completely and smiled, watching her fall to the jagged rocks below. "That's going to hurt in the morning." Something caught my attention on the ground. It was the sword she'd been fighting with. My foot knocked it down to join her in the sea. Maybe it'll hit her if we're lucky. I waved goodbye to both her and the sword before walking away. I returned to Malchus Aurelio's office, tiptoeing through the fallen wall and staring at his corpse for a good 5 minutes. He seemed to be more immortal than I did. Then my attention turned to something else. "Death mask," I said, picking up the relic. "Thanks," I told Malchus' still form. "I don't think you'll need it anymore, so I'll keep it. Besides, you made it just for me." I pulled it on and returned to my room in the castle. "You fool!" the man barked. "I thought you'd be pleased," I said back. "I said I would tell you how to gain eternal life if you killed Malchus Aurelio." "I know. Isabel got in the way." We looked at each other for a few seconds. It was quite relaxing. "Fine," he replied, "but you will have to wait." "Wait?" I screamed as he nodded. "I'm dying here." "I know that, but you can wait." There was no point arguing. If this man could give me life, then I must obey his commands. I accepted the fact and moved on. And that's my life. I finished my long, eccentric monologue. Next time, you can take a part, or I can use voices. "So, you actually saw a fiery woman?" "Oh, yes," I cooed dreamily. "Do you know anything else about her other than what you told me?" "No, sirree." "Why did she stick out to you of all things?" "That's none of your concern," the boy replied. "How did you come back from the dead?" "Excusey?" "You never gained immortal life. The Yarators kept you living, but poisoned. And from the sound of it, that was centuries ago. So how are you still alive?" "Wishful thinking," I suggested. "I couldn't tell him. A girl's got to keep her secrets, you know." "As you should know, Tourniquet rewards the winner of his competitions with whatever the heck they want. At least that's what I've heard. So good luck, Biscuit." "What? No, I'm not in the competitions." I laughed evilly. "Silly! Anyone on the island is a competitor, with or without consent." Which probably means this'll be our first and last chat. "What do you mean?" "Didn't you and your buddies wash up here the other day?" I asked him. "How do you know about that?" he asked me. "Stuff goes around. You 5 washing up here was your ticket to hell." "Welcome to hell." I wondered how badly he was freaking out inside. I could tell by his facial expressions that he was getting mixed emotions too. Suddenly, there was an indifferent freezing noise at the wall. I looked over there so quickly my neck popped painfully. I ignored the funny feeling and looked back up to the wall before pulling the teenager beside me as the amber ice flew toward us. I peered around the table behind which we hid as a rusty voice boomed, "Where is Jared?"